The grand hall of the House of Ledgers was hushed, its usual symphony of scratching quills and murmured calculations replaced by a heavy, accusatory silence. Lena stood before the master's great oak desk, her simple woolen dress feeling thinner than ever under the weight of every stare. Her brother, Darren, stood slightly apart, his face a masterful portrait of pained duty. "Master," Darren said, his voice echoing too loudly in the quiet, "it grieves my soul to speak, but truth must be served. I saw her, with my own eyes, take gold from the merchant's strongbox." He produced a small, velvet pouch, tipping it. 3 gold coins clattered onto the polished wood, each sound a nail in Lena's heart. She saw the fleeting gleam in his eyes, the one she'd learned to fear, the gleam of triumph. The master, his face a landscape of weary disappointment, looked from the coins to Lena's honest, bewildered face. He sighed, a sound of finality, and lifted the heavy ironwood gavel. It fell with a thunderous crack. "Lena, for theft against this house, you are dismissed. Leave now, and carry your shame with you." As she turned, her vision blurred with unshed tears, her gaze caught on the sunlit wall behind Darren. His shadow, cast by the high window, did not mirror his still posture. It quivered and stretched, a long, grasping finger of darkness that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Now, you must understand, this was not a land like any other. In this misty riverside kingdom, people knew a thing that others have forgotten. Every lie casts a shadow. A small, white lie might make a man's shadow twitch for a moment, but a lie born from a black heart, a lie meant to harm and destroy, that lie would feed a shadow, making it grow thicker, darker, and more substantial until it could no longer be contained. The townsfolk who witnessed Lena's fall did not just see a young woman disgraced. They felt the shift in the air, the chill that had nothing to do with the river mist. They gathered in small, nervous clusters. "Did you see it?" the baker whispered to his wife, his hands dusty with flour. The darkness that clung to the brother? It was like a stain on the sunlight. An old merchant who had always valued Lena's sharp mind and fair dealing shook his head, his eyes sad. A shadow that hungry will not be satisfied. It will feed until there is nothing left. They all knew the old saying, the one their grandparents whispered. The river remembers every truth, and it always settles its accounts. The great, carved doors of the House of Ledgers closed behind Lena with a sound that felt like the end of the world. The rain, a fine, cold drizzle, began to fall, soaking her hair and dress, hiding the tears that finally escaped. She walked the main street, a walk of utter solitude. Merchants she had broken bread with averted their eyes. Clerks she had helped with difficult sums looked down at their feet. The shame was a physical weight, a cloak of lead she had to carry. She did not head towards her small cottage, but instinctively turned towards the river, the one constant in her life. Its steady, rushing song had always comforted her. Now her feet slipped on the wet, grassy bank. She clutched her small satchel, which held all she owned in the world, and whispered the words her grandmother had taught her, a mantra against despair. "Truth will remember me. The river knows my name." She looked down into the churning, gray water, and her own reflection, distorted by rain and current, seemed to shift. For a moment, it was not her face she saw, but a soft, blue light deep within the water, and a voice that was not a sound called to her from the depths. Lena knelt, the damp earth soaking through her knees. She leaned forward, her hand trembling as she reached towards the strange, beckoning light. The water swirled, and a magnificent silver carp broke the surface. Its scales shimmered with an otherworldly luminescence, and its eyes held the deep, ancient knowledge of the riverbed. "Lena," a voice said, not in her ears, but directly in her mind, gentle and flowing. "The river does not forget a kindness." And in that moment, a memory, long buried, surfaced with perfect clarity. She was a small girl, her feet bare and muddy on this very bank. She had found a glorious fish, its scales like liquid silver, tangled and dying in a discarded fishing net. While other children might have run for their parents, she had worked with patient, careful fingers, untangling the tough cords until the fish was free. It had swum once around her ankles, a flash of gratitude, before disappearing into the deep. This carp was that fish. You are the river's messenger, Lena breathed, understanding dawning. The carp dipped its head in acknowledgement. I serve the spirit of this river, whom you saved. She has watched over you, and she sends you this. From its mouth, it produced a scroll sealed with wax that glowed with a soft, persistent blue light. On the outside, in elegant script, were the words, "For Lena, when her heart breaks." Inside her humble cottage, with the rain tapping a gentle rhythm on the thatched roof, Lena sat by the cold hearth. Her hand shook as she broke the glowing seal. The parchment unrolled without a sound. The words were not written in any ink she knew. They were formed from liquid light, swirling and shifting on the page like minnows in a stream. As she read, the letters rearranged themselves, forming a message meant for her eyes alone. Child of the current, it began, your heart is an anchor dragged through mud, heavy with a betrayal you did not earn. But listen, and listen well. Do not fight his lies with your fire. Do not scream his falsehoods to the wind. Such flames only breed more shadows and thicken the darkness. Instead, you must send a message of gratitude. Write to those in the House of Ledgers. Thank them for the years of work, for the wisdom shared, for the warmth of fellowship on cold mornings. Let your heart be light, even when it feels like stone. Send this gratitude from a place of peace, and the river will carry the truth for you. It will reveal what has been hidden in the deepest currents. Lena read the words again, her mind reeling. Gratitude? How could she be grateful? How could thanking them for casting her out possibly undo the terrible wrong that had been done? The instruction was a riddle, a mystery as deep and unfathomable as the river itself. Meanwhile, in the House of Ledgers, Darren felt a surge of triumph so powerful it was almost dizzying. The master had publicly bestowed upon him Lena's former title and the heavy iron key that unlocked the ledger vaults. The merchants, their faces a mixture of shock and unease, offered him hesitant congratulations. A difficult thing to expose your own kin, a spice trader said, clapping him on the shoulder with a heavy hand. Darren straightened his tunic, puffing out his chest. One must always choose the path of justice, no matter how painful, he declared, his voice ringing with a confidence he almost felt. But as he strode past the great, polished brass mirrors that lined the hall, he caught a glimpse of his reflection. For a heartbeat, it was not his face, but a distorted, greedy mask, eyes burning with avarice. He spun around, his heart hammering. Nothing was there. Yet, a profound chill settled in his bones, a cold that the roaring central fire could not touch. He felt a presence at his back, a denser darkness in the room. A whisper, thin and cold as a shard of ice, slithered into his mind. It was the voice of his shadow. You have done well, it murmured. But this is only the beginning. You deserve more. You deserve all the honor, all the praise. It is your rightful due. Take it. Dawn had not yet broken, but Lena had not slept. The spirit's command echoed in her mind. She wrestled with it, her anger and hurt warring with a tiny, stubborn spark of faith in the river that had never led her astray. As the first pale light touched the horizon, she made her decision. She would trust. She lit a single candle, its small flame a defiance of the darkness outside. She took out a clean sheet of parchment and her simple clay inkwell. Pushing aside the bitterness, she forced herself to remember the good times. The master patiently teaching her the complex trade codes, the laughter shared with the other clerks over a midday meal, the satisfaction of a perfectly balanced ledger. She began to write. To all my former colleagues in the House of Ledgers, she wrote, her script steadying as she continued. I write not to protest my fate, but to express my sincere gratitude. Thank you for the years of employment, for the skills you taught me, for the camaraderie I will always cherish. As she wrote of these simple, honest joys, a strange peace settled over her. The weight on her heart lessened. When she finished and signed her name, a miracle occurred. The ordinary black ink of her words began to shimmer, then glow, transforming into the same vibrant, living blue light as the spirit's letter. The parchment hummed with a gentle, latent power. Lena returned to the riverbank as the sky lightened to a soft gray. The messenger carp was waiting, its silver scales catching the nascent light. "How does it reach them?" Lena asked. The carp let out a soft, bubbling whistle. In response, a flock of small, dun-colored river birds descended from the misty reeds, alighting on the bank around her. They were ordinary in appearance, but their eyes held an unusual intelligence. Lena chose one, a bird with a distinctive fleck of white on its wing, and carefully tied the glowing scroll to its slender leg. The bird chirped once, a clear, melodic sound, then took flight. It did not fly up into the sky, but sped low over the surface of the river, its wings nearly skimming the water. And where its wingtips touched, the droplets of water that sprayed into the air did not simply fall back. They hung, suspended for a moment, each one a tiny, perfect crystal sphere. And within each sphere, a scene played out. Darren slyly pocketing a silver coin from a merchant's abandoned desk. Darren practicing his false accusation in an empty corridor. Darren's face twisted with envy, watching Lena receive praise. The river was gathering the truth, droplet by droplet, carrying it inexorably towards the House of Ledgers. Within the House of Ledgers, the business of the day was beginning, the air thick with an unspoken tension. The master was reviewing a complex trade agreement when the river bird with the white-flecked wing fluttered through an open window. It landed gracefully in the center of his desk, untied the scroll from its own leg with a deft peck of its beak, and then flew out the way it had come. All activity halted. The master stared at the scroll, recognizing Lena's familiar hand on the outside. He expected a plea for mercy, a list of denials. With trembling fingers, he unrolled it. The words did not stay on the page. The blue, luminous ink lifted into the air, swirling and coalescing into moving pictures that filled the space above his desk. A collective gasp went up from the assembled merchants and clerks. They saw, clear as day, Darren planting the velvet bag of gold in Lena's satchel. They heard his whispered plot to a shady-looking trader. They saw him alter ledger entries to cover his own small thefts over the months. This was no ordinary message. It was an email of pure, unassailable truth. Just as the final image, Darren, accepting congratulations with a smug smile, hung shimmering in the air, the man himself strode through the main door, ready to assume his new duties. Darren stopped dead in his tracks. The entire hall was frozen, every face a mask of horror and dawning anger, all directed at him. The glowing, accusatory images still shimmered in the air, silent and damning. This is sorcery," he spluttered, his face draining of all color. "She has conjured these lies to destroy me. Do not believe this trickery." But as he shouted his denials, the cold presence that had been dogging him erupted. The bright morning light in the hall began to dim, as if a cloud were passing over the sun. The shadows in the corners of the room lengthened, creeping across the floor like spilled ink. Darren's own shadow, which had been a normal shape at his feet, tore itself free from the stone floor. It rose up, a towering, man-shaped void of absolute blackness, a smoky form that swallowed the light around it. It had no distinct features, but it had a voice, a hollow, terrifying echo of Darren's own. It spoke the words he had just uttered. "This is sorcery." Then it repeated his first great lie. "I saw her take the gold." The shadow was giving voice to his deceit, making the whole hall bear witness. Pandemonium erupted. Merchants scrambled over each other to get away, overturning tables and sending scrolls scattering across the floor. The monstrous shadow loomed over them all, its form sucking the warmth and light from the very air. The candles flickered and died. The great hearth's fire guttered as if in a strong wind. "It's a demon, a shade," a clerk screamed, hiding behind an overturned bench. The master, though fear was a cold knot in his stomach, found his voice. He slammed his hand on the desk. It is no demon from some netherworld, he roared. It is the weight of his own falsehoods given form. Truth has come to this house to collect its debt, and it will be paid in full. The shadow, hearing this, seemed to grow even more solid, more real. It stretched out a long, amorphous arm, a limb of swirling darkness, and reached for Darren. The inky tendril wrapped around his forearm, and the touch was so cold it burned. He was held fast, a prisoner of the very lies he had so carefully constructed. At that precise moment, the massive, iron-banded main doors of the hall, which were bolted shut, exploded inward, not from force, but from the pressure of water. A powerful, controlled torrent from the river itself flowed into the room. It did not flood indiscriminately, but swirled into a vast, living whirlpool in the center of the hall, its surface shimmering with the same blue light as Lena's letter. And from the calm eye of this watery vortex, a figure rose. It was the river spirit. She was cloaked in mist and robes woven from shimmering river weeds and luminous pearls. Her hair flowed like water, and her eyes held the deep, ancient memory of the river. Her gaze, calm and inexorable, settled on Darren. "Every lie is a stone dropped into my waters," she said, her voice the sound of rushing currents and falling rain. "You have dropped a mountain. Your shadow has gorged itself on your deceit. Now, it has its own hunger, and it will be fed." Darren fell to his knees, the shadow's grip like ice on his skin. "Mercy," he begged, his voice cracking. "I beg you, have mercy." As the spirit held Darren in her gaze, another figure appeared in the shattered doorway. It was Lena. The messenger carp had shown her a vision in the river's surface, a reflection of the chaos unfolding in the hall. She walked inside, her steps quiet but firm on the wet stone. She did not look at the magnificent spirit or the terrified crowd. Her eyes went directly to her brother, to the boy she had played with, shared secrets with, the young man she had looked up to. The anger she had nurtured since her dismissal melted away, replaced by a profound and aching pity. "Darren," she said, her voice soft but carrying through the chaos. "I never wanted to stand above you. I only ever wanted to stand beside you." Her words, so simple and devoid of malice, acted like a sunbeam on the shadow. The dark form flinched, its smoky edges fraying and dissipating slightly. Her unconditional love was a force its darkness could not comprehend or withstand. The river spirit turned her luminous gaze from Darren to Lena. Her expression was unreadable. "The truth has been revealed for all to see. This shadow is of his making, and his to bear. But the greatest wound was inflicted upon you, child of the current. Therefore, the choice of consequence is yours. Shall he be drowned by the monster he created, pulled into the deep where lies are weighed and found wanting? Or does your heart offer a thread of forgiveness, a chance for redemption?" A profound silence fell over the hall. The master, the merchants, even the spirit waited. Lena's hands clenched at her sides. She remembered the sting of his betrayal, the crushing weight of her shame. Vengeance was a tempting, fiery path. But then she remembered the spirit's words, "Do not fight lies with fire." She looked at her brother, broken and terrified, and saw the child he had been. She took a deep, shuddering breath. "I will not be his judge," she whispered, her voice gaining strength. "Let the river, which knows all truths, decide his fate. I trust its justice." The river spirit nodded, a slow, graceful movement. "So it shall be." The whirlpool in the center of the room surged forward, encircling both Darren and Lena in a towering, spinning wall of water. Inside this liquid cylinder, the water became a vast, panoramic mirror, showing not their reflections, but the story of their lives together. The merchants watched, mesmerized and humbled, as they saw Darren as a young boy, watching his parents praise Lena's quick mind, the first green seed of envy sprouting in his heart. They saw him tell small lies to his friends to make himself seem more important. They saw the jealousy fester and grow over years, a poison that twisted his soul until it erupted in the catastrophic lie that destroyed his sister's life. Behold, The spirit's voice echoed around them, not as a shout, but as a truth that resonated in their bones. He did not covet her gold or her title. He coveted the light within her, the love she inspired so effortlessly. He sought to steal it by extinguishing her name. As the final vision, Darren's face, contorted with hate as he whispered his plan, faded away. The shadow, which had been clinging to him, gave one final, powerful heave. It ripped itself completely free from his body, now a fully independent and ravenous entity of pure deceit. Now fully autonomous, the shadow lunged for its creator. It was no longer a mere silhouette, but a predatory creature of concentrated darkness, with grasping claws and a maw that seemed to absorb all light and sound. It wrapped its smoky limbs around Darren, and with a terrified scream that was abruptly cut off, he was dragged bodily from the hall, through the broken doors, and down the cobbled street towards the riverbank. The spirit, Lena, and the entire stunned assembly followed, a silent procession. On the muddy bank, the shadow held Darren over the churning, gray water, his body half submerged in the cold, relentless current. The river weighs every soul, the spirit intoned, her voice merging with the sound of the water. It will now weigh yours. Only a full and honest confession, the bearing of every hidden falsehood you carry, could diminish the shadow and grant you freedom. Hold back even a single lie, and it will pull you under, and you will be lost to the depths forever. Terrified, choking on river water, Darren began to speak. I lied, he screamed, his voice raw. I lied about Lena. I stole the gold myself, and put it in her bag to frame her. With each admission, the shadow's grip loosened a fraction. Its form became less dense, more translucent. I was jealous of her. I was jealous of the way the merchants respected her. I wanted her position. I wanted to be the one they praised. Each spoken truth was like a cleansing rain, washing away a layer of the darkness that composed the shadow. The watching crowd saw not a cunning villain, but a pitiful, broken man being consumed by the physical manifestation of his own sins. He was confessing to save his life, but the words, once spoken, carried the weight of genuine remorse. The river listened, its current seeming to slow. The shadow had shrunk to the size of a man, but it still held Darren firmly in the cold water. There is more, the spirit stated, her voice unwavering. The shadow still draws strength. You cling to one final lie, the foundational lie from which all the others grew. Confess it and be free. Darren sobbed, struggling against the weakening but still potent grip. He looked at Lena, who stood on the bank, her face a mixture of sorrow and hope. He saw the unconditional love there, a love he had betrayed long before the incident with the gold. And in that moment, his defenses crumbled completely. Our mother, he wailed, the sound torn from the deepest part of him. On her deathbed, she made me promise to always protect Lena, to be her guardian. I promised, but it was a lie. I didn't want the burden. I resented her for it. I never loved her as I promised I would. It was the most painful, ugly truth of all, the root of the poison. As this final, foundational lie left his lips, the shadow gave a silent, violent shudder. It collapsed in on itself, dissolving into a mere puddle of black water that was instantly swallowed and purified by the river's flow. The river stilled, its surface becoming as smooth as glass. The unnatural energy that had filled the air dissipated, leaving behind the calm of a late afternoon. Darren lay exhausted and weeping on the bank, physically free from the shadow, but now crushed beneath the immense weight of his confessed sins. The river spirit turned to Lena. She floated over the water and placed a cool, gentle hand on Lena's head. Your grace has mended what vengeance would have shattered into 1,000 pieces, she said. You chose to let the current of truth flow, and in doing so, you have cleansed this poison from your life and from this town. The spirit held out her hand, and from the water itself, a quill formed. It was made of pure, shimmering silver, and its tip seemed to be fashioned from a single, perfect dewdrop. Take this, the quill of clarity. With it, your hand will always record the truth, and your heart will always recognize it, no matter how deeply it is hidden. Lena took the quill. It was warm and hummed with a soft, steady power, a light that seemed to promise that no darkness could ever truly prevail. Back in the hall, amidst the wreckage of overturned furniture and scattered scrolls, the master approached Lena. He did not simply offer her back her old stool at the ledger desk. Instead, in a gesture that stunned the watching merchants, he went down on one knee before her, bowing his head. "Lena," he said, his voice thick with contrition, "this house was founded on the bedrock of truth, and I failed it. I allowed a shadow to cloud my vision, and I cast out our most precious asset. I beg your forgiveness. The House of Ledgers is nothing without your integrity. Will you please return? Not as a mere record keeper, but as our truth keeper, the guardian and moral compass of all that happens within these walls." Lena looked at the silver quill in her hand, then at the faces of the people around her, filled with shame and a desperate hope. She nodded slowly. "I will return," she said, her voice clear. But as she accepted the profound honor, her eyes were drawn to the open doorway, to the glimpse of the flowing river beyond. A quiet, lingering worry for the brother who had been dragged away by his own sins remained in her heart. Was he alive? Had the river's justice been one of mercy or of finality? Far, far down the river, in a sleepy fishing village where the current widened and slowed to a gentle pace, a man with a familiar face but entirely new eyes worked alongside the fisherman. It was Darren. The river had not taken his life, but it had scoured him clean of his pride and ambition. He earned his meager keep through the honest, exhausting labor of his hands, mending torn nets and hauling heavy catches from the boats. He never spoke of his past, and the fisherman, a quiet and accepting lot, never pressed him. Sometimes, on evenings when the water was calm, he would find a piece of scrap parchment or a smooth piece of bark and try to write. "Dear Lena," he would begin, "I'm sorry for everything." Or, "I live a simple life now. I understand." But the words always felt inadequate, and he could never finish. The river, it seemed, was still his final judge. Whenever he tried to send a message, placing it in a floating bottle or giving it to a traveler, fate would intervene. The bottle would wash back ashore, the traveler would lose it, or a sudden squall would arise. His words of remorse were consistently swallowed by the very waters that had granted him a second chance. Under Lena's stewardship, the House of Ledgers was not just restored, it was transformed. The Quill of Clarity ensured that every contract was not only legally sound, but morally just, every trade fair to all parties. The hall became a beacon, attracting merchants from distant kingdoms who had heard the legend of the Truth Keeper, who had defeated a shadow, not with swords, but with serenity. The atmosphere, once heavy with quiet competition and suspicion, became one of light, collaboration, and trust. A new saying was born in the marketplace, passed from merchant to merchant. You can cast a truth out the door, but it will always return through the window, clearer than before. Lena's story became the soul of the house, a living reminder that integrity was the most valuable currency of all. And so, a new tradition blossomed in the town, born from the ashes of the old scandal, the Festival of Shadows. Each year, on the anniversary of the day the shadow was defeated, the townsfolk would gather by the river. They would fold intricate paper birds, symbols of Lena's message of gratitude that had carried the truth home. As twilight descended, they would set the birds afloat on the water, each one carrying a small, lit candle. The sight was breathtaking, hundreds of flickering lights drifting on the dark current, a beautiful, collective promise to honor truth and reject deceit. Parents would tell their children the story of Lena and Darren as a bedtime legend, a warning against the corrosive nature of envy and a testament to the enduring, resilient power of a heart that chooses grace. Many years later, Lena, her hair now streaked with silver but her posture still straight, walked her familiar path along the riverbank. The House of Ledgers was in the capable hands of a new, young truth keeper she had carefully trained. She often came here to remember and to reflect. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple. The water rippled and the same silver carp surfaced. Its wise old eyes met hers. A message flowed into her mind, gentle as a summer current. Your brother, the carp communicated. He serves the truth now, in his own quiet, humble way. He harms no one. He cheats no one. The river is at peace with him. Lena felt a final, gentle release of the old, lingering sorrow she had carried for so long. A single tear traced a path down her wrinkled cheek, and as it fell, a soft, warm rain began to fall, mingling with her tear. And in that moment, as if in a final blessing, the entire surface of the river glowed with a faint, familiar, and comforting blue light. And so, the story wove itself into the fabric of the kingdom, a proverb told by elders and taught to children. A lie may rise like smoke, obscuring the sun for a time, but truth is patient as water. It carves through the hardest stone, washes the mud from the falsehood, and in the end, leaves only a clear reflection for all to see. The tale of Lena and Darren reminds us that our choices, both good and ill, ripple outwards, shaping our world and our very souls. Lena's incredible grace turned a personal tragedy into a lasting legend of hope. Her choice to trust the river's way, to fight a devastating line not with more lies or with fury, but with a surprising and profound gratitude, changed the destiny of a town. As the fire dies down to embers and the night grows deep and quiet, the storyteller leaves you with one last question, a whisper that lingers in the silence. If you were Lena, standing on that riverbank with the power to choose your brother's fate, would your heart have been large enough to forgive?